Welcome to Authentic Influence. This is Anthony Chancemuth from Simple Creative Marketing. And today we are talking about how to increase online course conversions. So if you have an online course, if you're thinking about building an online course, or you've got one already that's going and performing and you're selling it and that's all good, and you just are thinking about how do I increase the number of conversions, I'm going to bring in my guest here who is an expert at doing this. So I've got Tom Libelt, who is the guy you call when your online course is not selling. So he spends most of his time in Chiang Mai in Thailand. I'm a bit jealous about that. And he's the host of the Smart Brand Marketing Show. In the past, Tom has published around 5,000 Kindle books, built a successful SEO business, owned a coffee shop, a retail store, a record label. That's cool. Created a documentary and released 2 albums with 5 hits on top 10 Polish radio. Okay, maybe I'm going to get Tom to sing some songs for us. He likes to say that if you can't sell, then you're not in business. Marketing and sales are the backbone of a company. The website that you can check him out on is smartbrandmarketing.com, or you can go to wemarketonlinecourses.com, and they both will get you there. So, Tom, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nice intro.
Thanks, man. I like to, edify my guests when I can. You're sitting in Chiang Mai right now? Is that where you're at?
I am in Phuket right now. I'm overlooking the beach.
For those of us who don't have that, we're jealous. My wife and I spent a month in Koh Phangan, which is in one of the South Islands over there. And
nice.
Beautiful place. So let's talk about just maybe a bit of background for the audience here in terms of how did you even get into online courses, sales funnels, and all the things that you do. Where were you when you kind of jumped into this world?
That was by accident. So when I was running the SEO company full time, we were setting up a campaign for a gym in Atlanta. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and one of the managers was a Muay Thai champion. And we became friends, and he was doing some one-on-one sparring and training, and he didn't want to do that anymore because, no one wants to, trade time for money. So he asked me, and this was like 7, 8, I don't know, maybe 9 years. Like with every podcast, I'm like, how much longer has it been? But yeah, it's been many years ago. And he just goes, what if we put this stuff online? And back then, we didn't have all the tools that are available now. So this was much more difficult. And I said, I don't know, maybe, but we did it. Took us like 9 months to get everything wrapped up and, selling. But then once we got that done, he goes like, now I want you to market it. And I was like, market what? Muay Thai training online? It was such a weird concept, right? Because that's something you do at a gym. So I think my first online course that I was kind of thrown into was like the most difficult niche you can imagine. Like something people just don't do online. And it was hard. That took about 2 years to dial in. Because it was my first one too, and people just did not want to really do it online. It's like, I'm going to teach you how to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu online. Well, how? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? So it was just a very difficult niche. But once we got that going, and he kind of talked me up a little bit. I got a couple of referrals. Then once I got my kind of feet wet in that whole thing, I was like, you know what? I'm actually getting some good clients in this market. The SEO market is very unstable because of Google, right? That's basically. And I didn't really like the SEO crowd much. There's like a lot of, the SEO pros and all the spammy stuff going on. And I was like, let me switch to online courses. And things really took off. Like we were booked within, I think, weeks of me just going all in. And we've been booked ever since. Like I can't think of a month where we have more than one spot available that someone doesn't take up and pretty quickly. So it's been good for us. It's been good. That's amazing. Us. But it's been a lot of iterations though. That's like the main thing I want to mention here. Like it's one thing getting one course out and marketing it or 2, but getting 100 going, like you're going to go through some pains, man. And then on the other end, now when I see a course come up, like I can with 80% certainty see if it's going to sell. And there's always going to be something. like even now, we had a campaign going perfectly for a client, perfectly. YouTube ads, Facebook ads, everything dialed in. And Facebook just, wakes up one day and says, we're going to change up your targeting, your audiences, and pause your ads without you knowing it. And, moments like that, it's like, okay, back to work. And it's because of all these changes that happen that are out of your control. So even when you got stuff dialed in, right? Like, and I see this with course creators, they'll be like, well, can you just set this up for us and, make it work? I'm like, sure, that's what I want to do. I want to set it up and walk away evergreen. But these things will happen. And I always tell them, either your ad's going to burn out, your audience needs to change, or just one of these platforms is going to just destroy your business overnight, and it needs to be fixed. So taking that on yourself is often just very difficult, because not only do you have to get all of your course stuff and customer service right and educating, but now you got to be on top of all the platforms just messing with your like dialed in advertising as well.
Yeah, it really sucks to be at the mercy of a channel, right? So when you're like, oh, Facebook is where we're going to get all the acquisition, that's where it's all going to happen. Let's run ads. And then, like you say, if the algorithm changes or they want to prioritize something new or the targeting shifts, that becomes a major roadblock. And I've heard of people like horror stories where you kind of go, oh, we literally lost, a 5-figure or 6-figure income overnight because something changed. Or certainly in the SEO world with like Google updates like Panda and these other things that are going on. I'm sure you've seen some of that. So
yeah, so the thing like that we've done, like this client didn't even notice something's wrong, right? Because we do an omni-channel marketing at all times. Like we're doing advertising on AdWords, on YouTube, on Facebook. But I'm just saying, like, I know that one of his best performing ads was on Facebook. And, I started seeing a lot of Twitter, like noise yesterday that people's like campaigns been blocked and paused overnight. And I looked and I was like, yeah, one client, his best ad, same thing happened, but again, you can't rely on one channel. Like we never do that. Again, he didn't even know this. Like we just got to either fix his Facebook now, or we have to do a better job on the other channels to kind of, make up for it. But it's a constant thing, right? Like with marketing, because we spoke a little bit before the call, like, that I did some talk 2 years ago and things change. Man, things change every week. Like you can't just, stay coasting for a long time here. And that's one of the only reasons I still take on clients is, because we were running stuff with my company and I'd much rather set up my own campaigns, can make more money. But I have found no better way to kind of sharpen the saw other than still take on 2, 3, maybe 4 clients a month. Because, you can't see all this stuff happening with just one campaign. You get kind of complacent. Because things are working and stuff. Yeah. This keeps you on your toes, man. Because like you'll have like, and there's weeks where I really sit around and be like, wow, this is super easy. I don't have to do anything. I'm making money. And then back of my head, I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, what is going to happen soon, right? Because I'm just watching, and it always does.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the things that for those for reference. I mean, I'll link to your 2019 talk because there's still some, I think, fundamental elements you talked about in there which still apply today. But certainly things have changed, right? One of the things you talked about, or the way you opened that talk, was actually you talked about selling courses on Udemy. Is that still a relevant strategy in 2022? Is it if someone's wanting to launch a course, is that where they should go, or do you recommend people do something else now?
Well, if you remember that talk, like I didn't talk very nicely about Udemy, and I still don't. Like the whole point of me mentioning marketplaces is like, look, if you don't know how to market, and you're like really out of depth with it, you have no budget, go on Udemy. They'll do the marketing for you, but you're going to devalue your course, you're going to devalue yourself, and you're going to have a very, very difficult time taking those courses and then selling them for a premium anywhere else later on. Especially if people can just Google you, which most do, and be like, well, and I've had this happen to clients who've tried. Why would I buy this for $500 when you're selling this garbage on Udemy for $10? Like during webinars. And I told them, I was like, well, it's going to happen, because a big portion of my clients back then, it's not as much now because I just don't want to take them on as much, is, hey, I'm selling $250,000 on Udemy and they keep messing with me. One day it's, 80,000, one month it's 20,000, reviews are disappearing. I need to get off this platform. I'm like, man, you've sold to how many thousands of people already? They all know you as a $10 guy, and now you're trying to do a $500 course, right? So anytime, we're advertising those, and usually, these will sell through like webinars or other things. Like there's going to be a lot of responses of people being like, this stuff is like worth $10, isn't it? And it's very difficult, right? So Udemy is just, it's, I guess you could use it, to get some ideas validated. Like I would maybe, put out, it's like lean SEO, right? You will write, 10 pieces of content, very thin, just do really good on page, put it out, and next month you're going to check all this content, see what's ranking by itself, and then double down. Maybe I would use Udemy in that way. And the guys I've seen doing well on it, they've had 80, 90 courses, right? Yeah. So you sort of could, do this like lean online course approach. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to put out, the minimum viable product, like I would do with a SaaS. And I would put out a couple of them, not one, maybe like 15, 20. And within 2-3 months, I would check back which one's selling, take it off of Udemy, and make something good out of it. Maybe. That could be a decent, way of pulling this off.
What would be an alternative? So if someone's listening to this and saying, okay, I get it, it's going to damage sort of reputation, it's going to positioning, it takes a hit if I'm selling a $10 course, obviously for a marketplace like that. So how would you do it that differently? Would you say go and run ads to your course? Like what's a sort of way someone could launch without doing that on a marketplace?
Oh man, this is such a it depends answer. Do you have an audience? Do we want to build some kind of an authority first? But we should have something to sell at that same time, right? Can we run ads? Do you have a budget for ads? Do you have organic traffic coming anywhere? Do you have a social platform where you're sort of getting traction? No. Do we need to build that out? Are you known for anything? Do you have a service which we can productize, or where we can sell like a lower ladder thing to get people into it? Like this really depends on the situation, right? Yeah. Because I've had people that, have either huge followings or are speakers that don't have anything to sell, or authorities with a lot of influence but can't monetize it, to people with no traffic, no budgets, but good expertise, to just, fake it till you make it crowd. Like I've seen everything, right? And it depends. But I will tell you this, as an authority, and you don't need to be a big authority. I mean, even like a mini influencer, which it's not difficult to do. Help clients do this on Twitter sometimes and other platforms to get you like 10, 15,000 followers quickly. You can break a lot of these rules, which, you're going to kind of have problems with if you don't have a following, is because when you have that social proof, right? Like with me, if you put my name into Google, you have like 50 podcast episodes and everything. It's just super easy for me to talk with people. But if you don't, like a lot of the reasons why people won't buy your stuff is not because of your positioning, not because of your offer, not because of you. It's just the trust. Like they just don't trust you yet, And what I've seen is those people without any following, without social proof, like often they will have to come up with a much, much longer warm-up sequence. And I'm talking about much warmer, could be even 12 months before they start seeing upticks in sales. And it's only due to the fact that people just need to see you long enough to trust you on whatever you're selling. And it kind of sucks, because someone else and look, Twitter following means nothing. Like I said, we can build it very quickly. And some of the, richest clients I have zero or, close to zero followers on Twitter, but they have other, authority already, behind them. But I'm just saying, if you do have that, it helps you kind of, break through that trust issue a lot, because you'll be like, well, check me out. I'm an influencer here. And, people be like, oh my God, you're getting all this reach and engagement and stuff. You have thousands of followers. And be like, man, if you just knew how this works. But it does the job, right? So I do show some of the people with low budgets. I was like, let's just make you like a mini influencer there first. I mean, you're going to have something to sell or pre-sell, right? Like I hate building an audience without anything to sell. I've seen that go badly almost every single time. But I'm like, let's break some of these rules and help you out by doing that part. It's all nonsense, but it works.
Well, you're playing into human psychology,
Yeah.
and this whole books around influence. Let's talk about now that you've brought it up. Let's talk about the mini authority. What are the signals, right? So something I'm exploring is this concept of trust signals. So when you land on a course site for the first time, or even just a business, someone's website, what are we looking for to signal that someone is an authority? What needs to be on the page, or what needs to show up in Google? If I Google your name, okay, what am I really looking for? Is it that I'm looking for that you've shown up on 50 podcasts? Or what are some of these signals that you help your clients understand need to be there in order to increase your rate of sales?
I mean, it depends, right? Like the more authority you have, the less you have to care about this. Right. So with me, when you put my name into Google, you're going to come up with all this stuff. Right. So I don't actually have to do a lot more because I've done the work already. Right. Like I have all these podcasts and guests and things, and then some people have more. They even have to do less. They can just put an offer with, buy this course and, have actually nothing on the landing page. I've seen this. $1,000 course being sold with just a checkout page, But the less of authority you have, the more you got to put on there, And if you don't have things in Google, then, being a mini authority on Twitter or LinkedIn, okay, that's going to help. Having good case studies, that's going to help. Things as, as seen on or trusted by these brands, that's going to help. A good VSL letter on the sales page, that's going to help as well. If you don't have outside authority, you really have to do things more yourself. So like a really good VSL, sometimes I've seen with a couple of case studies will do enough. But you got to get that trust somehow. And the thing with selling courses is you don't have only, product market fit. You do have the product market educator fit. So some people don't like hearing this, but I'll be like, look, if you're selling the same type of education as 3 other people and 2 of them are doing really well with it, it could be just you. People don't want to learn from you. Like you're just not grabbing their attention as an educator. And that's tough too. So I guess the more entertaining and likable you are, the less you need to do of that outside social proof, but the more, you kind of got to push it. But eventually, and, we've kind of had this for my company, as a business plan from day one, I kind of, tell people to do that, is we've always focused a bit on SEO and podcasts and things, monthly, because it just grows. I think in the last 2 years, I kind of stopped now, I slowed down, but I've done maybe 120 podcast interviews. I set up a lot of partnerships and I've, started playing around with the social platforms, but it's not because I had to. We have clients and it's much easier building this stuff when you don't need it, but it compounds a lot. And I just think, even if you are, doing pretty well with your course, I would just add all of, these little things into your strategy, but just make them easy. And I think podcasts are pretty simple. You just show up and do it. SEO, it depends, right? But if you do lean SEO, it's not too bad too. But once this stuff compounds, it's just, that's how you scale. That's how you really scale, so you don't have to spend so much on pay-per-click and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really like the what you said there about compound marketing and just consistency over, whether it's monthly SEO, you can go lean, podcast appearances, partnerships, these sort of things. Something you said really stood out to me was how great or are you as an educator, and you call it the
Yeah.
product educator fit. And you're right. Some people are just not great at teaching. Some people are just not engaging as an educator. And if you're coming up against someone who's really compelling and great storyteller, does it in a fun way, and you want to learn from that. I'm thinking about my university days. One lecturer really stood out, and I always wanted to be at his lecture, right? And the rest of them were kind of boring, and I skipped class half the time. So
Yeah. But when you think about this too, it's like, look, if you're the entertaining guy, right? You put out the VSL, you put out all these, things, that sort of touch these points with people, like, oh, he's funny, he's educating, he's making me think. But if you're not, the outside social proof can still make it happen. Like if you go on a page, right, and let's say you got two different courses, you got them open in two different tabs, right? They're both on how to grow your agency or whatever, like just something simple, right? Or how to get leads in B2B or anything. Or even like a dentist teaching like very high-end techniques, which we've seen do 7 figures as well. And you've got two tabs open. Let's go with the dentist, because that's like a more boring niche, for a lot of people. One is super entertaining, shows you stuff, and you're like, man, I really want to learn from this guy. And then you got the other one, there's no video. He's just got a picture of himself. He's like, this is what I do. I charge, $20,000-$30,000 for all these things, and I'll teach you how to add them to your menu. And at the bottom, there's just a ton of celebrities that go fix their teeth with this guy. And he's going to beat out that entertaining guy almost every time. Like, that social proof is just so strong. Like, am I going to go with the guy who's making me laugh, or the guy who's able to charge Kanye West $50K for fixing his teeth or whatever, $100K? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can do both, but you got to kind of understand where you are, right? Like, if you're not that entertaining person, like, don't get on video so much when you're selling. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, play to your strengths and weaknesses. You're just going to need a lot more social proof, and you're going to have to show people that, like, maybe I'm not the most entertaining guy, but I will make you a lot of money. And the closer you are to making people money, the better your courses are going to sell. It's always like that, man. I have not seen almost any 7-figure clients that I've had where there was not at least one piece of, I'm going to help you money. Yeah, you can do courses to make, $200,000 a year, or 100, doing creative stuff. That's not difficult. I've seen that. But to really get to 7 figures, you got to be a little closer to that. Always that I've seen.
That's interesting. Webinars, are they still an effective way to sell courses?
Yeah, and sure, if you're entertaining. It's the same thing, man. People mess these up so badly.
All right, so tell me the difference between a good webinar and a terrible webinar. And I remember, if we go back, I don't know, 3 years ago or 5 years ago, you had these long, hour-long things. You'd be on there, and and then you end up with a pitch at the end. And now what I'm seeing is the market is maybe just on the online internet marketing space, but they've come down to maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. People have realized that, I guess, buyers don't want to sit around for all that time just to be sold something. What are you seeing, like, in terms of your clients and what people are doing? What's effective today in terms of webinars and webinar strategy?
I think I've been pretty instrumental with all the clients I've had of getting that time down from an hour. I hated it. I always thought, like, I lived in New York for over 9 years. You're not going to get a New Yorker to sit down for an hour and 20 minutes of that listening to your bio. Like, nobody cares about you much. Like, yeah, we want to know that, you have the skills, like, and you can usually put that across pretty quickly. but we don't really care like all about all your background and where you've been and what you've went through. Like that's nice for your like dinner parties, but as a buyer, I'm not really interested. So a lot of people cut that off a lot. And then, instead of doing that same nonsense of like, hey, I'm going to teach you the 3 things or the 5 magic bullets or whatever. Like, look, the only point of a webinar, in my opinion, is to convince the person watching it. And you should kind of do it like a sales letter. You're speaking to one person, right? Because you picked your audience. You just want to convince that this person that's watching your webinar, that what you are telling them that is possible for them. So all you are doing is convincing them that it's possible to complete whatever outcome it is you're selling at the end. You're not selling the outcome. You're not giving them tips, tricks, or teaching them anything. You're just convincing them that other people just like them have done it. They can do it. And you're the person that helped them with it. And at the end, and again, I see this messed up so many times, just one offer. One good offer and anchor it to something else if possible. So if you're selling a course for $500, anchor it to possibly, people working one-on-one with you that would cost them like $5,000 or $10,000. So once they're convinced that you're the guy to help them reach this outcome, that they are convinced they are able to actually pull this off, because that's a big, big thing, and webinars played a role in fixing that. And that the offer is much better than working with you in person. As long as the offer is decent, you'll be fine. But people overcomplicate this and just do weird stuff on the webinars, and I see it all the time.
What's your take on ClickFunnels and the way that Russell Brunson sells webinars? Because he's got this whole perfect webinar formula. I'm not sure if you've come across it or not.
I've seen it. Look, and I put out a newsletter every week to my email list, and it's like really good stuff. And every time I give people tips, at the end, I tell them, if you are an authority like Russell Brunson or Tony Robbins, these rules don't apply. You can do virtually anything at that point and still sell. The hype itself. Like, okay, there's a show that aired not too long ago, and I would recommend for those that have strong stomachs, because it's hilarious. Like, you're going to be like, man, I'm never going to be able to look at some of these people the same, to watch it. It's called The Undercover Billionaire. Season 2, they put Grant Cardone. You've heard of Grant, right? He was on that show. When you take his name and his money away, the guy could not sell anything, man. He was like tripping over cold calls. He couldn't close people. He couldn't book meetings. He, like, all the stuff he's telling you to do, like all this 10X and just do that, he couldn't do it. You take his name and fame away, and he was just completely lost. And if you watch it, you'll be just like, man. So Russell Brunson, if you take his name and fame and everything away, that perfect script webinar of his is going to be pretty much worthless.
It's all in the authority.
If you're an authority like that, if you're that big, like, different rules apply. You are then going by mini celebrity rules. So I'll even give you a webinar example. Like, a normal attendance for a webinar for someone that's weak is less than 10%. For someone that is really skilled, it could be 10 to 30%. For someone that's a celebrity, it could go high as 50 without them doing anything special. And that's just the way it is.
And do you find that's consistent across different industries? You talked about sort of Muay Thai. You started off with that as a sort of industry into marketers and agencies and different things. Are you seeing those figures kind of translate across different types of industries, or are they more nuanced?
No, it really depends, right? Because there's not enough hype in the Muay Thai crowd as there is around Russell Brunson, right? Because we are doing online marketing stuff, most of us, in some way, and he is a guru in that. It's like if you're going into the personal development space, Tony Robbins is the guy. right? It's difficult. Like, you're not going to beat Tony Robbins. You got to wait till he dies and hope that you're going to be the next one.
Yeah.
Those are just huge, right? Muay Thai is just such a niche sport where, even boxing, not many people watch boxing. I mean, even UFC, it's huge, right? But who is the main guy in the UFC that's making money? It's Joe Rogan. It's a weird thing, right? And if he tells you to buy something and some UFC champion tells you to buy something, who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to attend quicker? You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, but it's just those guys play by different rules, and there's just a couple of them. And the sad thing is that they're the ones teaching people, and this is why I mentioned Grant Cardone, right? Like, he's teaching all of these thousands of people about, like, powering through this stuff and 10xing and stuff. And then you watch him on that show and you're just like, dude, you're pathetic. Like, you can't close a simple $3,000 sale, and you're like, and then he's even whining on the shows like, if I had my name and my money, yeah, dude, like, if anyone had your name and your money, the rules would be different. Right? But that's just a reality. You got to kind of see for what it is. This is why I say, like, do not trust internet marketers too much.
Yeah.
Especially if they're too big, because what works for them will not work. I'll give you one more example. You've heard of traffic and conversions, right? Ryan Dice.
Yep.
So Ryan Dice, based on his fame, conference, and very warm audience, was able to master the $7 tripwire. Very quickly after that, every single other, wannabe marketer was selling the concept of a $7 tripwire. But I know a lot of them, and almost none of them could make it work. And neither could their clients. The only guy that made it work really well was Ryan Dice, the guy who came up with it and was working by much different rules. And that's the thing about learning from these guys, right? Like, you'll have like a sort of like a monkey see, monkey do, but no one's actually doing it really well. And if someone, on top comes up with an idea, everyone's going to be like, yeah, this is the new way of doing it, but they can't make it work. They're just selling you on it.
Yeah, I like that. You really need to pay attention to who's selling to you.
Well, I mean, so look, like, you got to understand, like, are the rules that they're working by applying to you? If you are a new Amazon seller, right, you are not competing with Jeff Bezos. You're not in the same ball game. You don't even have tickets to the game. But a lot of the guys are just like, I'm building the new Amazon. But I'm like, dude, you're not doing anything, really. I mean, like, you can't compare yourself to what these guys are doing. So with Russell Brunson, I mean, talk about anchoring. What's he charged now for his in-person marketing setup, which is probably worth like $20,000? He's charging $1 million now.
It's crazy.
But that's anchoring, right? So on his webinar, when you think about all the fame, the hype, and his authority, and then he anchors, you can get this for $300, or you can get me in the room for $1 million. I mean, dude, come on. Now, if you try to pull that off, people are going to laugh you out of that webinar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is like a very tricky thing to kind of, show people, because they're all writing this like, yeah, Russell Brunson's amazing. He is. He's a great marketer. He's got a lot of tips in there. A lot of great stuff. But just know that the stuff that's working for him is probably not going to work for you. There's stuff in there that you can really take away. And, and if you look at his like older stuff, but right now you're not competing with Russell. You're just not. The guy's got a $40,000 a day budget for AdWords. You're not competing with Russell.
Trying to tackle the giants. I think, my takeaway from this is, if you're selling a course, either you've got the authority, which is what you talked about, you're a mini celebrity of some sort or whatever you're doing there, or you have results. You can actually demonstrate results. I ran an SEO agency. We had, here's 3 case studies of clients that we helped them double their traffic or whatever it is in 12 months or whatever the time frame is. And then from there, and then what I'm selling you is, my strategies and how we did that. So now you're talking from experience, and that's much more compelling than a guru going out there and going, or Russell Brunson talking about selling his next an SEO course, right? And you're like, well,
So
right, yeah.
So there's always going to be a couple outliers, right? Because someone probably watching this is like, yeah, but I've seen, yeah, I know I've seen them too. There's always someone that just comes into a weird niche, like, they just have some kind of a knitting group that's super, super engaged and they're selling knitting courses. And they're making 5-6 figures. They're not going to make 7 figures with a knitting course. Trust me on that. But 5-6 figures with one good channel, one good small niche, it's possible. But for most people, and, like I said, the closer to money you are, the better. So I see a lot of service providers and coaches moving into these types of things, right? And then the path you kind of want to take to make this work really, really easily, because you're going to build an audience along the way, is first you trade time for money, right? You do one-on-one, we do it for you service. Then you switch to a do it with you service. So you sort of have some templates, things in place. Then you move to a coaching one-on-one service, because now you have everything and all the SOPs. Then you move into a group coaching type of move. And when you have the group coaching, the people that cannot afford group coaching should go into your online course. Sells every time. So that's like the path for a coach, but you're going to have to make sure that before you move, and this is a little harder of a move, from the one-on-one coaching to group coaching, you really have to have enough iterations that when you put the group in, you can still help everyone get results. And then it's easy. Then it's super easy. But that's the block for a lot of them. Like, a lot of people can't move from just one-on-one to like a group coaching and still show results. But that's the easiest path for, like the average Joe listening to this.
Yeah, I question that. I get the pathway, and I've seen that work for people in our community and whatnot. The challenge I see is, can you adequately deliver or help your clients get results if you're moving from one-on-one to group, right? Because now you're reducing the amount of time you're spending with them, getting to know their business, getting to know their challenges. If you're doing funnel audits, if you're doing whatever it is, maybe you're a financial coach and you're looking at their financial systems, right? So, and that's where I see people. I see the gurus selling, hey, go switch from one-on-one to group because you have more leverage, right? And we all want the leverage. We want more time. We want less time spending with clients, more time doing fun things, and more money, obviously. But if you can't get the results, right, that's a big problem. Like,
that's why I said this is the challenge. This is why that stops people. Just like you said, it's the toughest thing, going from the one-on-one to group coaching. So if you can't make that leap, making a leap to an online course is going to be even more difficult. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's kind of the path. If you cannot get that step right, it's not going to be a slam dunk. I'm talking about a slam dunk for people, right?
Yeah.
And some things are just extremely difficult. Like, okay, personally, I have not, and I probably never will, create an online course on how to market online courses. I can do it on smaller parts of that, on like how to create the lead magnet and stuff, because I know how to make sure that if I show it to you, you'll get it right. But there are so many different variables in actually the entire marketing part. And I see this with my clients. I can group coach you guys. I can show you how to write a warm-up email sequence and connect it between, get everything right. But if I don't audit this thing, it's going to be a mess every single time. I just have never seen anyone come up and be like, okay, this is great. You've done it 100%. So there are certain things which just don't really like marketing an online course is too big of an ask for someone to it's going to be like, I can convince you that you're going to be able to do it just because I'm a good sales guy. But I know that you're going to mess it up. And for those reasons, I would not put out a course like that. But something like, if you need to get your traffic right, that's a much easier ask. Right. Yeah. Like, if I can kind of start showing you like where people hang out and how to position your stuff to get their attention and how to best set up these campaigns on different platforms, that's much easier. But something like marketing a course is just too big. If you mess up the lead magnet, it's not going to work. If you mess up the warm-up sequence or webinar or sales page or your positioning or your offer or your pricing, there's just so many things. And I would be like, there's just no way even if I show you exactly how I do it, and if I show you 10 examples, that you're going to get it right. It's just almost based on my experience. So that would be just something too big for me to, like I've seen gurus do this, but yeah, the results are barely like so what would happen is like Sam Owens, right? He would put out something like this, something so big, but in the end, only the people that go into his group coaching, where he'll charge like $15,000 or $20,000 and get like 7 people in the group, and like his team helps them with, those are the only ones that succeed, really. So there's going to be a big upsell on the back end of that, right? Like I would do a course and be like, well, I know almost everyone's going to fail, but just have like a good concept in their head, and then I can move them into my very expensive group coaching, and my team's going to do that anyways. So it's just like an extra stepping stone at that point, where like, okay, you don't trust me enough to pay me $20K, so but you'll trust me enough to give me $2K. I'll show you how much work this is, and then you're going to pay me the rest. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's more of the play when you see there. So if you cannot move from like the one-on-one to group coaching, like, yeah, you're going to have to be a little creative if you want to pull this off.
And I've experienced that. I mean, I haven't sold anything at like 50K or whatever Sam Owens is selling, but like I've experienced getting people to the point of understanding that, hey, you just don't have the necessary background or understanding to go and implement a sales funnel. Like I can teach them these are the different components of a landing page. This is lead pages or whatever these tools are. But then, I remember doing this. I did this maybe a few years ago now, and people just got stuck. Like it was meant to be a 6-week, I'll work with you over 6 weeks, and no one got through the first module because they just got stuck and was like, I can't do this. And it was just easier for me to go, well, how about I just implement it for you, and you just pay me to implement that for you.
That's completely right.
Yeah.
That's completely right. So this would be more of like a stepping stone for you, right? Like you're selling it, again, you anchor it to your pricing properly. If I'm charging $30K for it, I'll give it to you for maybe $1,500. You know what I mean? Like I'll teach you exactly what I do, but in the end, I know that you're going to need me anyways, right? So it's like I said, it's a stepping stone play. Like there's just certain things like that.
And is that what you're seeing as an evolution in online courses? It's more of the cohort and implementation, what you call it, done with you type scenarios. Is that becoming more relevant now?
It's becoming popular. Yeah, it's becoming really popular. Like if you look at the rite of passage, because he's doing a really good job with it. I think it's David Perel. When he started, I think he had maybe like 20, 30 people in each cohort. Now it's like 200 or 150. Like he's making probably like a 7-figure business, but it's, it is cohorts, right? So he's got to actually teach. It's like a university schedule. He'll set this up with his team and he'll do a 3-month, or I don't know how long, but he'll do that. And I've seen this work with quite a few of my clients as well. Like we've done boot camps, and the first boot camp maybe got like 5-10 people. Some sold out, but it depends, again, authority, everything. But get smaller. Second one we get like 40, and then by like the 6th, 7th iterations, they're like they're making a lot of money. But again, this is like you're teaching. You have a schedule. It's not really an online course where you have no fulfillment, and it's it's a bit of a different play. They are more popular, yes, but the reason a lot of people get into courses is I just don't want to fulfill anything. I mean, that's just what it is, right?
Yeah, I get it. I get the psychology. I think it's just personally, I don't want to have a situation where I have 100 refunds because they couldn't get results. Like, here's a bunch of knowledge for you. It's like I'm selling you a book, right? But I'm just selling it with videos. And it's like,
for some things you kind of, and for writing especially, like if you really want to become a good writer and get traction, the reason the cohort works is because other people will kind of look over your stuff, give you advice. David will do his thing. And when you put your content out, these other highly engaged, and there's, everyone's got something to win here. They're going to help you promote this content because then you're going to help them promote their content. You know what I mean? So this is a big traction thing too.
Mhm.
And when someone does this for a while, now I'm not sure if David does this, but I've seen someone else do it. They will set up an alumni thing, right?
Yes.
So there's a guy, Peter Shankman, who's done this for Shank Minds. He sold the Help a Reporter Out business.
Right.
And he was actually able to charge people to be in the alumni because the alumni was so powerful in a way. And people would join whatever he's doing to get into the alumni. And then he would also charge them for in-person events where the alumni from each city would show up, and he made a pretty big business out of this whole thing, out of just, doing the public speaking and books that he does.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of play you can do, and like with David, I would imagine he has an alumni of 2,000 maybe writers now. And, that's pretty powerful to get into, right? Like people that have a lot of traction and kind of want you to succeed. That's huge too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that just opens the doors to refer opportunities, job referrals, hiring. You can create a job board in there and sell that. There's a ton of things you can do once you have that audience in that network.
Yeah. So that's the good thing about cohorts, right? That's why, a lot of them are working well, because if you get into a copywriting cohort and you come up with a sort of niche thing that you do, that itself could launch you into a business. Just, having 8 people who spent $4K to be in this thing and are running businesses, they'll be like, maybe we'll just use you. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Yeah. So they are very popular now. I agree. There's actually a few apps, right, coming out now that only do cohorts. Was it Circle, I think, and a few other, I think. Yeah. There's just cohort. Actually, Sam Owens just came up with one. I don't know if it's a cohort based, but he put it's called School. I looked at it a few times, and he combined a calendar, community, and course into this one platform. So I think it also kind of helps. And he put some gamification in it too. So you have a leaderboard and stuff, but it's a cool little thing that he's pulling off. But I do see platforms making these weird moves now, right? Like they're all niching into their own spaces and we do this better, and we help you with cohorts. We help you with gamification. It's interesting.
Yeah. It usually starts with that consultant coach first, the service, and then it moves into SaaS. And then it's, you're right, because then they can sell it multiples, you can get investors and all these different things that come from that.
He's got the audience and money now, right? So that's the big thing here, But again, different game that he's playing. But still, when you watch the new platforms being launched, it does show you a bit where the industry's moving, right? So, when New Zenler came out, it was a cheaper version of Kajabi where you can do everything in one platform, but then they didn't have some of the options. So Circle came in, and there's always something happening, which you can kind of, when you see a new platform come out and it's getting a lot of traction, you should watch what kind of type of courses and things that are happening on there, because that's often the new trend. Now, you don't need to jump onto it, because I see people still selling old school courses, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth, paying attention to. Could give you some ideas too. Yeah. And cohorts I like for a reason that it's much easier to create urgency to have people to buy. Because if you have a course that's selling evergreen all the time, it's hard to say, hey, if you don't buy it in 7 days, it's not going to be full. Come on, man, it's a course. But a cohort, if you miss this one, well, maybe the next one's in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. It's much easier to get people kind of on the fence, be like, well, no, maybe I should join now. Or not only am I not getting this, I'm losing a year of my life.
Absolutely. We need a push to actually take the action. You talked about lead magnets. I know it's something that you specialize on, Tom. So what's kind of working now? Have we moved on from PDF ebooks, being the thing? I'm seeing a lot more like quiz funnels and much more interactive type lead magnets. What are you seeing in terms of what's getting traction for people, and what makes a great lead magnet versus what sucks?
This really depends too. We've done a lot of different things. The main thing that you don't want to do is in the lead magnet, let's start with this because people do it all the time, is you don't want to teach a portion or the same thing that you're going to be teaching in your course. Like, you don't want to start educating in your lead magnet. That's a horrible thing to do. Often people will, because I've seen it's like, a PDF book on how to meditate, then we're going to sell you a meditation course. Well, why would I buy your meditation course if you just gave me a book on how to meditate? I'm going to put that book on the shelf and check this off in my head. Most people will never look through the book, but they're not going to buy your course, because if they look at the warm-up sequence and you're like, hey, I'm going to teach you meditation, like, well, I already got your free book, and there's just zero urgency there. So, the lead magnet, like, okay, with the webinar, you're convincing someone that what you're selling is possible for them to achieve. With a lead magnet, is more of a framing play, and this, again, it's so different for every niche. But, if you're teaching someone how to do SEO, it could be, first how to perform an SEO audit and see everything that's wrong. And we're going to teach you how to fix all that in the course. It's more of a framing thing. If you're teaching people how to do 20 pull-ups, and I've seen courses do this, the lead magnet would be, how to strengthen your wrists to make sure you can even pull off the first one. It's more of a framing issue. But the types, oh man, it really depends. Like, we've had mini courses work after very, very short. We've had still PDFs if you just do the framing properly, right? You got to get creative with this, but they work just fine. We've turned some more expensive courses into just straight up application pages. There's no lead magnet whatsoever. The lead magnet is that you apply, and then once you get accepted, the warm-up sequence starts. We had a couple with quizzes, right? With just a couple questions. And then based on those, you're getting, it really depends on the niche. This is so difficult to just give like a broad,
Yeah, but it's interesting to hear just the different types of access points or entry points into the funnel. Because I think, I've seen that too, where you run an ad and the ad goes straight to an application page. But because the brand has a ton of social proof, it has whatever, who the seller is, maybe you've been retargeted because you're on their list, or you've read that, gone to their site. A digital marketer does this really well, as an example. Right, and so I'm even talking about like Dynamite Circle and the way they advertise through the podcasts and then through their events and whatever else, and partnerships and local events. They do those as well. So but they don't have say. Yeah,
I think just the main thing is like, just stay away from those, like, the 3 things that every dentist should know, or like all those, that stuff doesn't work anymore. Like, people are not going to give you an email to hear about like the one thing you need to know about your finances or something. It's just nobody cares, and even those courses, they usually fail. Like something like, I'm going to teach you the foundations of finances. Like, what are you even talking about? There's no outcome there. I've seen this so much, man. Like, people come to me like, I have this course, it's not selling. I'm like, yeah, no wonder why.
Because your course doesn't work.
No, it's just, there's nothing there. This is like a 5-minute YouTube video that I could watch. You know what I mean? Like, there's just nothing there. Like, I'm going to teach you how to manage your finances. What does that even mean? I'm going to teach you how to be happy. What is happiness, right? There's just stuff which is very, like, if it's too vague, it shouldn't be a course in the first place. But then, like, if you're going to teach me the basics in the lead magnet about your basics course already, like, what is the point of this whole thing? But these things, like, I see them all the time, right? And people wonder like why it's not selling. Well, your offer sucks. The lead magnet already gave everything away. What's the point? Like there are different things you're doing along the way, right? Like, initially you're just grabbing someone's attention from the ad. Then you got to kind of, get them framed into like the mindset that like, oh, this is interesting, like planting a seed type thing, right? Then you got to convince them that it's possible. You do this through a warm-up sequence or through a webinar. The sales page, that's when you actually start selling the thing, really. And it's got to be, it's like a sales script, except you're not around to handle objections, so it's got to be pretty good. And then you got the checkout process, and that's got to, have a couple elements, hopefully, which, and this is what I don't like about Teachable and Thinkific in some ways. They have that stupid 2-step checkout process.
Yeah.
Where someone enrolls into a school, doesn't even know that they haven't bought the course yet. Then they're confused because, well, I haven't paid. Like, it's weird, man. Like, things need to be streamlined for good conversions. But that's what I mean. Like, these steps all need to make sense, right? You're still selling to a person, right? Like, people think it's like these numbers or this audience. No, there's no. It's people. It's individual people sitting in front of a monitor and going through your stuff. So if you can't even go through your stuff without laughing, think about what they're doing. Because it's still people. It's still people, yeah. And I think that concept gets lost in this internet marketing thing. Because I've had this asked me, like, do you think I can have a great business without ever speaking to anyone? I'm like, you do understand, like, that, these are people you're selling to.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Don't get me started on that. You talked about just the 2-step sort of process, that these tools are sort of forcing on people. What do you recommend instead in terms of tech or platforms that are working well?
So, like, this is kind of hard if someone's starting out.
Yeah.
Maybe just use Gumroad. If you're just starting out, like, just make sure you have a sales page and an easy checkout process. Now, look, Thinkific and Teachable, they're great as hosting platforms, in some ways. As sales page builders and checkouts, not so much. And I mean, I know both of these companies pretty well, and we have talks about this, but it is what it is. Look, they're hosting platforms. So initially, maybe you use their 2-step checkout process, but you'll have like a warm-up sequence and another sequence like, yes, you enrolled in the school, you did not actually buy the course, do that here. It's another step, you're going to lose conversions, but whatever. You can try, some of them do have that, like you can try their 1-step checkout. It's still in beta. I don't know why. It's been like years. It works okay. I see a lot of other people making more money. They'll use something like ThriveCard or a different platform and just zap people straight into the courses. They don't want anything to do with their, blogging, sales page, or checkout aspects. You can move to something like Kajabi, which kind of lets you do everything, but it's still slow and clunky. It's easy to set up, but it's just a slow and clunky tool. ClickFunnels even worse, especially for tracking. ClickFunnels sucks for tracking, granular tracking. But look, all these tools do their job, but it just depends on your budget and the more money you're making, the more you're going to move towards like custom stuff.
Yeah.
Eventually you might just build your own tool. You're just like, oh, this sucks. Like, it's not really working the way I want it to. And I've seen it happen. I mean, think when you're making like, let's say $800,000 a year, right? And knowing if you build your own tool, which is probably going to cost like 30, you can improve your conversions by 7%. That's just a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Like, it depends where you're at. Really depends where you're at.
Absolutely. All right, man. Look, love the conversation. This is actually a lot of fun. So, everyone listening here, I think there's what's the best website? Do you like? Well, it's the same website anyway. Well, let's go to Smart Brand Marketing. Yeah. But WeMarketOnlineCourses.com. You can check out, connect with Tom there. He's got some free gifts on the site. And you've also got a podcast. Are you still doing that, or is it on hold, or where are you at with that?
I do it when I feel like it.
Same as me. All good, but there's a ton of good guests and information on there, so you can have a listen to that. But definitely, if you want to learn more about online courses, selling, building, and marketing, please jump over to WeMarketOnlineCourses.com. There's a lot of things you can learn about this stuff, but I appreciate just the conversation today, Tom. We've learned a lot about just optimizing for conversion, and I'm sure there's going to be more we can dig into at another time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Did you have any last messages for our listeners here?
Not much. I mean, look, we all know what we got to do, right? like we all know in the back, like we might be procrastinating on it, not doing it, but like lean into the uncomfortable stuff, man. You know what you got to do to make it happen.
100%. Okay, so I've got one final question for you, which is what I asked all my guests. What's one thing that you like to do for your own mental health and well-being?
Not work. that's the main thing, man. Like look, I put boundaries on my work time, and the one thing I've done is just get a separate office for my work, right? So when I leave the office, it means I'm done. Like I don't take my work home with me. Like if someone messages me and like something happens, I'm at the house, I'm like, look, it's got to wait till the office tomorrow, and it helps. That's the only thing I needed. And people you don't like. That's another thing I've seen. Initially, like you might have to, like a long time ago with the SEO biz, I took on any client. Don't do that. Don't take on projects you don't like. It's just there's plenty of stuff for us to do. But separate your work from your like free time. That's gonna fix your mental stuff for sure.
Spoken like someone who's experienced it. I can understand why you're in over there in Thailand now. So, just this personal curiosity, because I'm starting to do some research now. But what is the visa situation and what's the COVID situation over there in Thailand?
So COVID is, from what I hear, it's happening, right? But people are getting sick, not many are dying. So it's like you're getting like a 7-day flu. The visa situation is just fine. Like I got the elite visa, so I can stay up to 5 years at the moment and not really care about anything. But there's all types of visas you can get in Thailand. So many, right?
Right.
But for me, it's just like, this is like where a lot of the friends I have hang out. And I actually only like being in Europe and the West, maybe like 4 or 5 months a year. And I just want to go back to just, my like freedom, which we have here in a lot of ways.
You're not rushing back to Poland anytime soon.
I mean, Poland is fine, but, other than spring and fall, and only part of that, the weather sucks.
Yeah.
Summers are just too hot now. And the winters, I mean, who wants to be in Europe in the winter, right? And then in the US, when I go see my parents, they're in Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, again, right? Like, I'm like, how many months of good weather do you have? And my mom's like, 3 weeks. So I enjoy going there. Like, I do have a residency in Las Vegas, so I go there sometimes for like a month or two.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. But again, like, after a while, like, I don't like all these like constraints in the West. Like, it's much more free here. Like a cop stops you, give them $15 and move on, right? Like, they're just like, it's just much more easier to, if you have money, you can move through things without any real stress, which you can't do in the West. Yeah.
Certainly not here in Sydney, but
well, yeah, I heard about Australia. You guys are extreme now, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just, for me, it's just easier, and I enjoy being in the West, but just not for the whole year. Like 4 or 5 months, I have more than enough.
I think I have a title for if you were to release a biography, maybe you call it Finding Freedom or Chasing Sunrise. Chasing Sun.
Well, yeah, before COVID, I would actually move along with the weather, right? So I would go to the US in the spring till like, maybe I would go like May until June, July till September in Europe, and I'd come back to Asia. I would actually just move like that every year.
That's fantastic. I love it. All right, man. Appreciate your time.
Man.
So, again, everyone, wemarketonlinecourses.com. And if you got some value, please do the tweets, do the socials, whatever. Tag myself, tag Tom, and subscribe. All right. We'll see you all again real soon.
All right.